Hey Reddit. I need to get this off my chest. I'm not sure if anyone will believe me, but I don't care. Something messed up happened to me last weekend, and I haven't been able to sleep since. So, here's the deal. My parents left me home alone for the weekend. Nothing new, I'm 19 and it wasn't the first time they've trusted me with the house. No big parties, no craziness, just me, Netflix, and some pizza. Pretty chill, right? Anyway, it started Saturday morning. I was in the attic digging through some old boxes. I know, stupid move in hindsight. I was just bored and thought I'd look for some of my old stuff, maybe an old game console or something. You know how it goes. I found this dusty box, buried under a bunch of old blankets. It wasn't labeled or anything, and it looked older than all the other stuff up there. Inside were just a bunch of random things, old papers, a broken lamp, some yellowing Polaroids. Nothing weird, until I actually looked at the Polaroids. The first couple were just old family photos, probably from before I was born. But then I saw one that made my stomach flip. It was a picture of my house, taken from the street, but the weird thing? There was a person standing in the window, looking out. The person looked like me. I brushed it off at first, like maybe it was just someone who looked similar, but the longer I stared at it, the more convinced I became that it was me. Same height, same build, wearing clothes that I literally owned right now. Here's the creepy part, the date on the back. It was from 1984. 10 years before I was even born. I put the photo down and tried to shake it off. I mean, Polaroids can fade, right? Maybe I was just imagining things. I went back downstairs, trying to distract myself, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling. Like I was being watched. Things didn't get bad until later that night. I was watching a movie, half asleep on the couch when I heard a thud upstairs. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. It's old, and noises happen, but then I heard it again. Louder this time. I paused the movie, sitting up. My heart was racing, but I told myself it was nothing. I forced myself to get up and check it out. Every step up the stairs felt heavier than the last. When I reached the top, everything was quiet again. I checked my room, my parents' room, the bathroom. Nothing. I was about to head back downstairs when I heard something. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate, coming from the attic. I stood there for a second, frozen. Nobody else was supposed to be in the house. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't want to sound like a lunatic, calling the cops because I heard footsteps. But then, the steps started getting louder. Whatever, or whoever, was up there was moving toward the attic door. My stomach dropped. I ran to the hallway, grabbed the attic pull cord, and yanked it down. It unfolded with this loud creak, and I stared up into the dark space above me. Hello? I called out, my voice shaking like a little kid. No answer. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed up, more out of desperation than bravery. The beam of light cut through the dust, illuminating piles of old boxes and junk. I slowly stepped into the attic, feeling the wooden boards creak under my feet. That's when I saw it. Another Polaroid. Laying face up, right in the middle of the attic floor. I didn't put it there. I hesitated, then slowly picked it up. My hands were shaking. This picture was darker, harder to make out, but it was unmistakable. It was me, again. Same clothes, same face. Except this time, I wasn't looking out the window. This time, I was standing in the attic. And here's the part that really freaked me out. Behind me, in the picture, there was a shadowy figure. I dropped the Polaroid and bolted out of the attic, slamming the hatch shut behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, I texted my parents, asking if they knew anything about the pictures. They acted like I was crazy, swore they didn't know what I was talking about. I almost wanted to believe them, but something didn't sit right. That feeling of being watched, it hasn't gone away. I thought that was the end of it until last night. I woke up around 3 a.m. to this weird sound, like someone was whispering my name. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then I heard it again. Louder this time. Closer. I sat up, heart pounding, and reached for my phone. The screen lit up with a new notification, a picture message. I didn't recognize the number, but when I opened it, I nearly threw my phone across the room. It was another Polaroid. This time, it was taken from right outside my bedroom door. And I swear, the shadowy figure in the background? It's getting closer. I haven't told anyone else. I haven't gone back into the attic either. Honestly, I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't think I'm alone here anymore. I've never really been into posting on Reddit, but after what happened to me last night, I have to tell someone. I don't know if it's paranormal or what, but I'm still shaking just thinking about it. So, I live alone in a small apartment. It's nothing special, just a one-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. I've been here for about a year, and nothing weird has ever happened before. It's the kind of building where everyone keeps to themselves, and I like that. Last night, I got home from work late, around 9 p.m. I grabbed some takeout, settled on the couch, and started scrolling through Netflix. I live for lazy nights like that, just zoning out in front of the TV. I couldn't find anything to watch, so I started one of those true crime docs. You know, the kind that's more background noise than something you actually watch. About 30 minutes in, I noticed something strange. The volume on my TV suddenly went up by itself. Not like a little nudge either, it jumped from barely audible to blaring. At first, I thought I must have sat on the remote or hit the volume button without noticing, but nope. The remote was right next to me on the couch, untouched. Weird, but not the creepiest thing ever, right? I figured it was just some random glitch. So I grabbed the remote, turned the volume back down, and went back to watching. Maybe 10 minutes later, it happened again. This time, the volume went all the way to max. The sound was so loud that I nearly dropped my food. Now I was getting freaked out. I turned the TV off, staring at it for a moment, wondering what the hell was going on. I checked the remote, nothing seemed wrong with it. Batteries were fine, no buttons were stuck. I even turned the TV back on to check for some weird update or something, but everything seemed normal. That's when I heard it. A faint clicking noise, coming from the other side of the room. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct. Like the sound of plastic tapping against wood. I looked over at the coffee table and froze. The remote, which I had just set down, was moving. Not sliding or falling, it was shifting. Like someone, or something, was gently nudging it along the table, bit by bit. I just stared at it, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe it was my eyes playing tricks on me, or maybe the table wasn't level. But then, right in front of me, the remote lifted, just an inch off the table, and then dropped back down with a soft thud. I bolted off the couch. My brain was scrambling to make sense of what was happening. There was no draft, no wind, and no one else in the apartment. I grabbed my phone, trying to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal, just some kind of fluke. But that's when the TV turned itself back on. Except this time, it didn't go to the true crime documentary I had been watching. The screen flickered, glitching for a second, before displaying static, just pure white noise, like an old antenna TV with no signal. My stomach dropped. This was wrong. Then the static started to form shapes. I couldn't really explain it at first, but in the chaos of the flickering screen, I saw figures, human-like, but distorted, flickering in and out. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, one of the figures moved closer to the screen, like it was trying to push through it. I turned around, grabbing my keys and heading straight for the door, but as soon as my hand touched the knob, the TV volume went up again. All the way to max. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't from the TV, this voice came from directly behind me, low and raspy, barely more than a whisper. It said, "Stay." I froze, hand still on the doorknob. I was too scared to even turn around, too scared to breathe. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore, like someone, or something, was standing right behind me. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I yanked the door open and sprinted out of the apartment. I didn't even look back. I ended up staying at a friend's place that night, and I haven't been back home since. I don't know what the hell happened, but whatever it was, I'm done. I'm not going back. Okay, so I don't usually post here, but I'm seriously freaked out and don't know what to do. This happened just last night, and I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something's still wrong. Anyway, here it goes. So, last night, I was home alone. My roommate is out of town for the week visiting family, so it's just been me in the apartment. No big deal, I've lived here for almost 2 years, and nothing weird has ever happened. It was a pretty chill night. I made some dinner, watched a movie, and around 11 p.m. I decided to call it a night. I got ready for bed and started my usual routine, brush my teeth, wash my face, all that normal stuff. The bathroom in our apartment is tiny, so the mirror takes up most of the wall above the sink, and you can basically see yourself no matter where you stand. As I was washing my face, I glanced up at the mirror, just out of habit. That's when I noticed something off. You know that feeling when something just isn't right, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That's exactly how I felt. At first, I didn't see anything strange, but as I looked closer, I realized that my reflection wasn't quite matching my movements. I thought maybe I was just tired, but no matter what I did, raise my hand, tilt my head, the reflection was just a half-second behind. Like it was lagging. I stared at it, and I swear, for a moment, the reflection smiled at me, even though my face stayed completely neutral. I stepped back, blinking hard, trying to shake it off. I turned away from the mirror, telling myself I was just imagining things. Stress or something. It had been a long day. I walked back to my room, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That feeling of being watched was growing, like there were eyes on the back of my neck. I tried to shrug it off, but I was too creeped out. So, like a rational adult, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling Reddit to distract myself. It worked for a while, but every now and then, I caught myself glancing at the reflection in the window by my bed. It was dark outside, so I could clearly see myself sitting there. But something about it felt wrong again. Like, I wasn't alone in the reflection. I squinted at the glass, trying to make out what it was. At first, it looked like there was just a shadow behind me, but then I saw it, a figure standing in the hallway, barely visible in the reflection of the window. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly turned around, but when I looked, there was no one there. The hallway was completely empty. I laughed nervously, telling myself I was being ridiculous. But when I turned back to the window, the figure was still there, standing closer now, almost right behind me in the reflection. My chest tightened. I whipped around again, but the room was still empty. At this point, I was freaking out. I ran over to the hallway, turning on every light, checking every room. Nothing. No one. I even looked behind the shower curtain like I was in some bad horror movie. Everything was normal, but I couldn't shake that feeling. I went back to my room, determined to just go to bed and forget about it. I sat on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and glanced at the window one last time. My reflection was gone. I don't mean the room was empty, I wasn't there anymore. Just the hallway behind me. I leaned closer to the window, trying to figure out what was going on. And then I saw it. There was a man standing in the hallway, just out of sight from where I sat. He wasn't a shadow or a trick of the light. He was real. His face was pale, eyes wide, and he was just standing there, watching me. Before I could react, the lights in the hallway flickered and went out. The reflection in the window went black, too. I froze, not daring to move. After what felt like forever, the lights flickered back on, but this time, when I looked at the reflection, the man was gone. I didn't sleep at all last night. I locked my bedroom door, put a chair under the knob, and just sat there until morning. I don't know who, or what, I saw, but I haven't gone near a mirror since. And the worst part? This morning, when I checked the hallway, the mirror in the bathroom was cracked, right where I saw the man standing. Okay, so I've been reading stories on this sub for a while, but I never thought I'd have one to post myself. I'm not really the believe in the supernatural type, but what happened last night has me rethinking everything. I don't even know what to do, so here goes. For context, I live in a pretty normal suburban neighborhood. Quiet, no weirdos, and the house I rent is decent, 2 bedrooms, a little backyard, nothing fancy. My roommate is out of town visiting her boyfriend for the week, so I've had the place to myself. Usually, I love it, having the house to myself is great. Until last night. It started around 11 p.m. I was lying on the couch, half asleep, binge-watching some random show on Netflix. You know when you're about to doze off and you hear something that snaps you wide awake? That's what happened. At first, I thought I heard scratching, like a faint scritch-scritch noise, coming from the wall. I brushed it off as the house settling or maybe a mouse in the walls. Whatever. I turned up the volume and tried to ignore it. But the sound didn't stop. In fact, it got louder. Scritch-scritch. It was coming from the vent above the TV. I got up and walked over to the vent, staring at it, hoping it was just my imagination. But no. I could hear something up there, moving around. like something was crawling through the air ducts. I stood there for a second, debating whether I should check it out or just pretend I didn't hear it. Then, the sound stopped. Dead silence. I stared at the vent, waiting for it to start up again, but nothing. Relieved, I went back to the couch, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. I was just about to turn off the TV and call it a night when the noise started again, louder this time. Except this time, it wasn't scratching. It was breathing. Not human breathing either. It was deep, raspy, and rhythmic, like something big was up there. My heart started racing, but I tried to convince myself it was the air system malfunctioning or something. I mean, what else could it be, right? I walked over to the vent again, stood right under it, and listened. The breathing was getting louder. Closer. Suddenly, a sharp bang echoed through the house. Something inside the vent had slammed against the metal. I jumped back, heart pounding. I don't know why, but I grabbed a chair and climbed up, putting my ear right next to the vent to get a better listen. That's when I heard it, clear as day, a low, guttural voice whispering from inside the vent. "Let me out." I nearly fell off the chair. My mind was racing. I jumped down, grabbed my phone, and ran to my bedroom. I shut the door, locking it behind me, and immediately called my roommate. No answer. I didn't know what to do. Was someone messing with me? Was I hallucinating? I was trying to calm myself down when I heard another sound, this time, coming from the vent in my bedroom. That same low voice, repeating itself. "Let me out." I backed away, staring at the vent, too scared to move. The vent cover rattled like something was trying to push it open from the inside. My whole body went cold. There was something up there. Something alive. I grabbed my phone again and dialed 911, but as I waited for the operator to pick up, the vent cover popped off and clattered to the floor. I screamed and bolted for the door, throwing it open just as I heard something heavy hit the floor behind me. I didn't look back. I ran straight out of the house, barefoot, phone in hand, not stopping until I was outside. I called a friend to pick me up, and I've been staying with them ever since. I haven't gone back to the house. I don't know what the hell was in those vents, but I'm not going back to find out. I'm thinking of breaking my lease and moving, because there's no way I'm sleeping in that house again. Alright, Reddit. I've never posted before, but something happened last night that's got me completely freaked out, and I don't know what to do. I've always been a skeptic, like, seriously, I don't believe in ghosts or any of that paranormal stuff, but after what happened, I might need to reconsider. So, I recently moved into this old house. It's a rental, but the price was cheap, and the place is huge compared to what I'm used to. The house has a weird layout, though. There's this one door at the very end of the hallway that's been locked since I moved in. I asked the landlord about it, and he gave me some vague answer about it being a storage room that was off limits. Whatever. I didn't think much of it. I just left it alone. Last night, I was alone in the house, scrolling through my phone and watching YouTube, like usual. It was around midnight when I started hearing these faint noises, like creaking and tapping. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. This place is old, after all, but the noises started getting louder. I muted the video I was watching and listened. The sound was coming from down the hall, from behind that locked door. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone was lightly knocking from the inside. I stared at the door, half expecting it to stop, but it didn't. The tapping continued, steady and slow. At this point, I was getting nervous, but I told myself it had to be something explainable. Maybe a branch brushing against the side of the house, or a draft making something inside the room knock against the wall. But then it changed. The knocking got louder. More frantic. Almost desperate. I got up, heart pounding, and walked down the hallway. The closer I got to the door, the louder it got. I stopped right in front of it, my hand hovering over the knob. It felt cold to the touch, like the air around the door was somehow colder than the rest of the house. I pressed my ear against it, listening. And then I heard it, a voice. Soft, but clear as day. Help me. I jumped back, my breath catching in my throat. I wasn't imagining it. Someone, or something, was in that room. I stood there frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to open the door, but it was locked. There was no way to get in. The voice came again, this time louder. Help me, please. I panicked and ran back to the living room, grabbing my phone. I didn't know whether to call the police or the landlord. My hands were shaking as I dialed the landlord's number. He picked up after a few rings, groggy and confused since it was late. I told him what was happening, about the knocking and the voice behind the locked door. His tone changed instantly. Do not open that door, he said, his voice dead serious. Whatever you do, stay away from it. I asked him what the hell was going on, but all he said was, I'm on my way. Don't go near the door. Then he hung up. At that point, I was terrified. I didn't know what to think. Why would he be so freaked out about the door? I kept glancing down the hallway, half expecting something to burst through it. The knocking had stopped, but the house felt eerily silent. Too silent. I waited in the living room, heart racing, until I heard a loud bang from down the hall. The door was shaking, like someone was pounding on it from the inside. I grabbed a kitchen knife and stood there, too scared to move but too scared to sit still. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the banging stopped. I waited, my whole body tense, until I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It was the landlord. He rushed inside, pale and shaking. Without saying a word, he stormed down the hallway, keys jangling in his hand. He fumbled with the lock on the door, muttering under his breath. I followed him, trying to get answers, but he wouldn't tell me anything. Finally, he managed to get the door open, and I braced myself for what was inside. But the room was empty. It was just an old, dusty storage room, filled with boxes and junk. Nothing that could have made the noises or the voice I heard. But the landlord was sweating, visibly shaken. He turned to me and said, "You should move out. This house, it's not safe." I asked him again what was going on, but he wouldn't tell me. He just repeated, "It's not safe," and left. I haven't been able to sleep since. I don't know what was behind that door last night, but I know what I heard. I don't know if I'm staying in this house much longer, but the thing is, I still hear it. The knocking. Every night. It's quieter now, but it's still there. And I swear, the voice is getting louder. I don't know if anyone will believe this, but after what happened last night, I just need to tell someone. I've been living alone for a while now, and it's been great. Quiet, peaceful, until last night, when something happened that I can't explain. So, I live in an older house, one of those big, creaky places with too many rooms and strange hallways that lead to dead ends. When I first moved in, I thought the layout was kind of charming in an eerie, old house, kind of way. But lately, it's been giving me the creeps. Little things, noises in the walls, doors I swore I'd closed being open again, that kind of stuff. But last night was different. It was around midnight, and I had just gotten into bed when I heard something strange, footsteps, but not coming from outside or down the hall. They were coming from beneath me, like from a basement. The thing is, I don't have a basement. At first, I thought I was hearing things, but the footsteps were clear, slow, deliberate, like someone walking up a set of stairs. I sat up in bed, listening. The house was dead quiet, except for the soft thud of footsteps, getting closer. I got out of bed, my heart racing, and grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight. I crept out of my room, listening intently. The footsteps stopped, and there was nothing but silence. I stood there, confused, until I heard it again, this time, coming from right beneath the floor where I was standing. That's when I noticed something. In the hallway outside my bedroom, there was a small door I'd never really paid attention to. I assumed it was a closet, but I'd never bothered to open it. But now, standing there in the dark, I felt this strange pull to open it. I walked over, heart pounding, and turned the knob. It wasn't a closet. Behind the door was a narrow, wooden staircase leading down into the pitch-black darkness. My blood ran cold. I've lived in this house for over a year, and I'd never seen these stairs before. There was no way they were there before. I stood there, staring down into the dark, trying to make sense of it. I had never seen anything like this in the house before. No hidden rooms, no basement, no staircases that shouldn't exist. But here it was, right in front of me. The air coming from the staircase was cold, like it was coming from a deep, underground space. I shined my phone's flashlight down, but the light didn't reach the bottom. I couldn't see how far down it went. Against every ounce of common sense in my body, I started walking down the stairs. Each step creaked loudly under my weight, echoing in the silence. The air grew colder with each step, and the darkness seemed to press in on me from all sides. About halfway down, I heard it again, the footsteps. Except this time, they weren't beneath me. They were behind me. I spun around, shining my flashlight back up the stairs, but there was nothing. Just the empty hallway at the top, and the open door. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, listening. And then, I heard it. A soft, raspy whisper. "Come down." I bolted. I ran up the stairs, slamming the door behind me, and sprinted back to my room. I locked the door, shoved a chair against it, and sat on my bed, trying to calm down. My whole body was shaking. I had no idea what I'd just seen, but I knew one thing, that staircase wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't sleep at all last night. I kept hearing faint footsteps outside my door, like something was pacing in the hallway. Every time I worked up the courage to check, the hallway was empty, and the little door at the end was closed, just like it had always been. I don't know what's behind that door, or where those stairs lead. I'm too scared to go near it again. But there's something I can't stop thinking about. When I first opened the door, and looked down into the darkness, I'm pretty sure I saw someone standing at the bottom. I wasn't going to post this, but I can't stop thinking about it. This happened 2 nights ago, and I'm still freaked out. For context, I live alone in an older house that I bought about 6 months ago. It's just me and my dog, Benny. It's a quiet neighborhood, and nothing really strange has ever happened, until now. There's an attic in the house, one of those old ones with a pull-down ladder that creaks like it's going to fall apart. The first time I checked it out, there wasn't much up there, just dust, cobwebs, and a few old boxes from the previous owners. I left it alone after that, because, honestly, attics kind of creep me out. But recently, I've been hearing noises. Weird, shuffling sounds coming from the ceiling late at night, like something, or someone, is moving around up there. At first, I thought it was just squirrels or something. But last night, I found out it wasn't. It was around 2 a.m. and Benny started barking like crazy. He was in the living room, staring at the ceiling, growling in a way I'd never heard before. His fur was standing on end, and he wouldn't stop. I tried to calm him down, but then I heard it, the shuffling noise, much louder this time, coming from the attic. It wasn't the quick scurrying of a small animal either. It was slow, deliberate. Like footsteps. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I stood there for what felt like forever, just listening. The footsteps moved closer to where I was standing, like whoever, or whatever, was up there was walking directly over my head. I grabbed a flashlight and, against my better judgment, pulled down the attic ladder. The ladder creaked, and Benny went silent, like he knew something was wrong. I climbed up, slowly, my hands shaking as I pointed the flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. Just the same old dusty boxes, the same empty space. I shined the light around, checking every corner, but there was no one there. I almost convinced myself that I was just hearing things, until I saw it. At the far end of the attic, right in the corner, there was a small trapdoor. It was a square piece of wood about 2 feet across, with a rusted metal latch. I hadn't noticed it before, and the way it was positioned, you wouldn't see it unless you were looking for it. My pulse quickened as I walked closer, my flashlight beam bouncing across the floor. The trapdoor looked ancient, like it hadn't been touched in decades. But as I got closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The dust around the door had been disturbed. There were footprints. Fresh ones. I backed away, my hands shaking, and started to climb down the ladder as fast as I could. But just as I reached the bottom, I heard it, the sound of the latch being pulled back. I stared up at the opening to the attic, praying I was imagining it. But I wasn't. The trapdoor creaked open. I didn't wait to see what was coming out. I slammed the attic ladder shut and ran for the door, Benny at my heels, barking like mad. I locked myself in my car, heart racing, and called the cops. I told them someone was in my house, and they needed to come fast. They showed up about 15 minutes later. By then, I had driven down the street, too scared to stay parked in my driveway. When the cops got there, they searched the entire house, including the attic. They didn't find anyone. But here's the thing, when they pulled the attic ladder down again, the trapdoor was closed. Locked. Like it had never been opened at all. I tried to explain what I saw, but they just chalked it up to nerves and suggested I might have been dreaming. They were polite, but I could tell they didn't believe me. I thought I was losing my mind, until I went back into the house this morning. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong, so I went back up to the attic to check one more time. That's when I found the note. It was taped to the inside of the attic door, scrawled in messy handwriting on a torn piece of paper. Stop opening the door. I don't know who left it. I don't know how long it's been there. But I haven't been able to sleep since, and now, every night, I hear the same slow, deliberate footsteps above me. The cops won't come back, and I'm not sure what to do anymore. Benny's been barking at the ceiling again. And this time, I swear I can hear breathing. I've lived in my house for about 3 years now. It's a small place in the middle of nowhere, kind of a cabin-style home with thick woods all around. It's the kind of isolation I've always loved, no neighbors, no traffic, just quiet. I never thought being alone in the middle of the woods would be something to fear. Until now. It started a few weeks ago, and honestly, I've been trying to convince myself I'm just being paranoid. But what happened last night? There's no way I imagined it. My house has a lot of windows. Big ones. They're great during the day because they let in all the natural light, but at night? When it's pitch black outside? They're terrifying. It's like living in a glass box, completely exposed. I don't have curtains in most of the rooms because there's never been a reason to cover them, no one is around to see inside. Or so I thought. 2 weeks ago, I started noticing things were off. I'd be in the living room watching TV, and I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye. Every time I looked, there was nothing there, just the blackness of the woods outside. I chalked it up to shadows, maybe an animal passing by. It didn't bother me too much, but it kept happening. Last night, though, something changed. I was up late, scrolling through my phone with the TV on in the background. Benny, my dog, was curled up on the floor next to me. He's usually calm, but around 1 a.m. he started growling, low and deep, his eyes fixed on the big window facing the backyard. I froze. Benny never growls unless there's a reason. I turned off the TV and listened, but all I could hear was the wind rustling through the trees. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but then Benny's growling got louder. His hackles were raised, and he was staring, unblinking, at the window. I didn't want to look. But I had to. I slowly turned my head toward the window, my stomach churning with dread. At first, all I could see was darkness, just the faint outline of the trees swaying in the night. But then, my heart nearly stopped. There was a face. Pressed up against the glass. It was pale, with hollow eyes and a mouth that looked like it had been stretched too wide. I could barely make out the features, but I knew someone, or something, was staring right at me from the other side of the window. I jumped up, knocking my phone to the floor, and backed away from the window. Benny went wild, barking like mad, but the face didn't move. It just stayed there, motionless, watching me. My mind was racing, there shouldn't have been anyone out there. I live in the middle of nowhere. No one ever comes by. I grabbed my phone and shakily dialed 911, trying to keep my eyes on the window. I told the operator someone was outside my house, staring through the window, and they said they'd send someone as soon as they could, but since I'm so far out, it would take a while. As I was on the phone, the face slowly disappeared into the darkness. Benny kept barking at the window, but there was nothing there. I stayed on the phone with the dispatcher, pacing the living room, waiting for the cops to arrive. I didn't want to look outside again, but I kept glancing at the window, terrified that the face would come back. 30 minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the property, checked the woods around the house, but they didn't find anything. No footprints. No signs that anyone had been there. They told me it was probably just an animal, maybe a trick of the light. But I know what I saw. It wasn't an animal. It was a person, or something that looked like one. I thought that was the end of it, but I couldn't sleep last night. Around 3 a.m. I heard something. A soft tapping. Coming from the window again. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. I peered through the cracks between my fingers, and there it was, the face. This time, it was closer. Much closer. Right at the glass, like it was waiting for me to notice it. The thing is, this time, it was smiling. A wide, unnatural smile, like its lips were stretched too far apart. I threw the blanket over my head and waited for the tapping to stop. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but eventually, everything went silent. I haven't opened the curtain since, and now, I keep all the lights on, but I still feel like I'm being watched. I don't know what that thing was, but I know it's still out there. I can feel it. I don't think it's gone. And the worst part? I'm starting to hear the tapping again. Every night, it's getting louder. I'm too afraid to look. I had always loved the quiet of my house when I was alone. It was a rare treat, a chance to unwind and enjoy some peace. That night, my parents were out of town, and I had the whole place to myself. I settled in with a good book, the soft glow of the lamp casting comforting shadows around the room. The silence was soothing, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. Around midnight, I decided to call it a night. As I was brushing my teeth, I heard a faint noise coming from downstairs. It sounded like a door creaking open. My heart skipped a beat, but I brushed it off as the wind. After all, it was an old house, and it made noises all the time. I climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again. This time, it was unmistakable, the sound of footsteps on the wooden floor. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, creeping out of bed to investigate. The hallway was dark and silent. I tiptoed down the stairs, the light from my phone casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I reached the bottom, I saw the front door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone broken in? I took a deep breath and pushed the door open wider, peering into the darkness outside. Nothing. Just the empty street and the rustling of leaves in the wind. I closed the door and locked it again, double-checking this time. Feeling a bit foolish, I turned to go back upstairs when I heard a whisper. It was so faint, I almost thought I imagined it. But then I heard it again, clearer this time, a voice calling my name. My blood ran cold. I spun around, shining the flashlight in every direction, but there was no one there. I backed up slowly, my heart racing, and bumped into something solid. I turned, and there, standing in the shadows, was a figure. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark silhouette. I screamed and dropped my phone, the light flickering out as it hit the floor. In the darkness, I felt a cold hand grab my arm. I struggled, kicking and screaming, but the grip was strong. Just as I thought I was done for, the lights flickered on. My parents stood in the doorway, looking confused and worried. The figure was gone. There was no sign of anyone else in the house. My parents assured me it was just a bad dream, but I knew what I had seen. To this day, I can't explain it, but I never stay home alone anymore. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howls through the trees and the rain lashes against the windows. I was home alone, my parents having gone out for a rare date night. I had settled in with a horror movie, the perfect accompaniment to the eerie weather outside. Halfway through the movie, the power went out. The house was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate my way to the kitchen to find some candles. As I lit the candles, I heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It was a low, rhythmic thumping, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. My heart started to race. I tried to convince myself it was just the old furnace acting up, but the sound was too deliberate, too menacing. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my only source of comfort, and slowly made my way to the basement door. The thumping grew louder as I descended the creaky wooden stairs. The air was damp and cold, and the smell of mildew was overpowering. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw a faint light coming from the far corner of the basement. I crept closer, my heart pounding in my ears. As I rounded the corner, I saw an old, dusty mirror propped up against the wall. The light was coming from behind it. I moved the mirror aside, revealing a small, hidden door. It was slightly ajar, and the light was spilling out from the crack. I pushed the door open, revealing a narrow passageway lined with flickering candles. The thumping sound was louder now, echoing off the stone walls. I followed the passageway, my knife clutched tightly in my hand. The air grew colder with each step, and I could see my breath in the dim light. The passageway opened up into a small, circular room. In the center of the room was an old wooden table, and on the table was a large, ornate box. The thumping was coming from inside the box. I approached the table, my hands shaking. I reached out and slowly lifted the lid of the box. Inside was a heart, still beating, connected to a tangle of tubes and wires. The sight was so grotesque, I almost dropped the lid in shock. Suddenly, the candles went out, plunging the room into darkness. I heard a low, guttural growl behind me. I spun around, but I couldn't see anything. The growl grew louder, closer. I backed up against the table, my knife held out in front of me. Then, I felt a cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I screamed and swung the knife wildly, but it passed through empty air. The growl turned into a sinister laugh, echoing around the room. I bolted for the passageway, running as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was back in the kitchen, slamming the basement door shut behind me. I could still hear the laughter, faint but unmistakable. I barricaded myself in my room, waiting for my parents to come home. When they finally did, I told them everything. They searched the basement, but there was no sign of the passageway, the room, or the box. They assured me it was just my imagination, but I knew what I had seen and heard. To this day, I can't explain it. But I never go into the basement alone anymore.